They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You can play any and every position. Coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh, my goodness. Let's see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice. Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it. Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.
You got to earn your liberation.
All right. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition. Once I get this cover off of here of Earn Your Liberation. Black Power Media, Jared Ball, Geechee Y'all, Brother Diallo. What's up, fellas? How you feeling this morning? Good morning.
Hello. I'm hot.
Hello. What's up, folks? What's up to the remixers already coming into the chat? Please like, share, subscribe. Let folks know you're going to be here. Put the link in your socials. Invite others to join you. Got a big show this morning. Will be some seriousness and some silliness for sure. Right out the gate, Syrup C, thank you. 10 pounds. Where you at in the world?
UK.
Uhuru and Mishikamano, African dragons. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Forgive me. The unity of the wretched of the earth shall overturn the Babylon colonial mode of production. The last shall be first. Happy Black August. Can't think of a better way to get it started. Thank you, Syrup C. Right on. Peace to you.
Is that Mishikamano? Is that the indigenous people in Nicaragua?
Honestly, I do not know. Nope. Good morning, Marcus. Nope. Nobody's in Atlanta. I don't think any of us are in Atlanta. Greetings, Sugar Booger. Peace. James in the building. Peace.
Y'all gonna have to fly me out. It's like them Instagram models. Fly me out.
I did look up flights last night after Kim got mad.
Fly me out to the thing. I'll go. I'll sit on your balcony and take selfies. Just you get the whole Instagram treatment. Fly me out.
Kim yelled at us on air, and then I got more after the show off air. Kim was not happy that we're not down there. What's up, Coco? Peace to Coco. How you doing?
She wanted us to burn it down.
ZZ. Yeah, she wanted us to be down there. You know. Just real quick, just so folks know, in a few minutes, about 10 minutes or so, Dedrick Muhammad is going to join us to talk about a new report, Still a Dream, about the economic condition of Black people here in the U.S. And then most of the second hour, we're going to spend talking about what Kim is mad we not in attendance to live, the InvestFest 2023 kicking off this weekend in Atlanta, the Earn Your Leisure crew. And we've looked in a little bit to some of their lineup, and boy, oh boy. InfestMess. And it is a mess. And it's worked out, I think, perfectly, because we get a little bit of the seriousness with the report from Dedrick and his crew, and then we get to look at what these folks are in denial of and obfuscating the reality of in the second half. So, but anyway, but no, I did look up flights. I did look up some flights last. I was like, man, I could do this. We could probably, make this happen, but we would have to work some things out in advance. I'd have to, I have to, I need some accommodations. I need some old man accommodations. InvestMess for sure. What's up, Obi? Yeah. So, but other than that, what else is going on? What's the latest? What's Peace, Megan.
I mean, I think
JB Love.
Diallo texted me last night and said he was nervous because his homeboy Trump got locked up, and I think Diallo's about to turn himself in this week too.
Oh, for real?
So
Oh shit!
That's the only kind of thing that's going on right
every
now.
day I fast
Yeah.
and pray that the Lord give me strength not to go into the right wing grift. That's where all the money resides. So don't y'all sitting here joking. I might just one day be like, these liberals, the left has gone crazy. I didn't leave the left left me. Become a right wing grifter.
I mean,
One
Larry
day,
Elder
man.
got on Breakfast Club with that,
And everybody lost their shit. I'm like, damn, okay. Saying that's simplified, you know. He literally looked at Charlemagne and was like, man, you need to jump off of Biden's nuts and get over here on Trump nuts. Trump nuts are much more better roasted and brown, orange. He's like, get off them Biden. Everybody was like, ooh, he told Charlemagne. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Did they just find out who this dude was? It's just so easy. Black people, man, we don't have racial esteem. That's what I have to say. We just let people do us any kind of way, and then they do the most low vibration. I'm gonna start talking like that. They do the most low vibrational shit, and we ready to embrace people who've been shitting on us for decades. It's disgusting.
Syrup C is coming in strong this morning. Dr. Ball, I've been celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop by reading. I mix what I like, really enjoying it. Thank you. Thank you, Syrup C.
I think they was trying to do. I think they was trying to pull on some left strings by saying they bring Larry Elder up there. They thought they could like gang on him and whip him up intellectually, but it just, you know, I don't know if it worked out for them. So I think that's what that was what they was going for.
I think you're right. I think there's a long tradition of that hustle with this fake left-right argument that props both up to their constituencies and moves nobody anywhere. Yeah. So that makes sense. There is the let's beat up on the easy conservative and get some liberal points. And then when folks like us come around, they can use the fact that they argued with Larry Elder to prove to us that they are sufficiently left.
Right. It's like I said, the fact that those two individuals would get up there and do that goofy ass dance, it means nothing. But the fact that so many black people were like sharing that shit and regurgitating his talking points and acting as though there was some type of profound statement by Larry Elder, or as if Larry Elder is a person worthy to be listened to by any self-respecting black person on the planet. It's disturbing, man. I'm like, why be loyal? I say all the time, we give no incentive for loyalty to our community, loyalty to our agenda, or we give no incentive for people to be loyalty to the fundamental dignity of African people and our struggle. Because anytime a dude literally can make a career out of hating black people and allying and providing comfort to our enemies, and then come on some silly show and say some weak ass surface bullshit, and black people really think it's a profound dressing down, it's disturbing to me.
I admit some level of being impressed at the recyclability of people like Larry Elder, the ability of the machine to bring these people right back up decades later. And I'm not like, does Charlemagne ever wonder, sort of to your point, who is this dude? Why am I even talking to this dude? Like, when does the Breakfast Club audience ever stop for a second and think, I'm sure some of them are thinking, I've never heard of this Larry Elder dude. Whether they like him or not, they have to at least recognize, I've never heard of this guy before. Where is he coming from? Why am I all of a sudden hearing about him? Why is he relevant to this audience? It's just remarkable. So anyway, Geechee is in the Matrix.
Yeah, I'm gonna be audio most.
Well,
of the time.
I think I can't deal with Ghost Geechee just talking in my head. I got to see something.
So why don't we should be able to set it up so you can see the avatar, and then if you just select an avatar, we can actually see something better than this logo.
So we know you there because I don't see your thing on the thing. I might say some things.
And then you even vibrate when you talk. So put an avatar on this thing. Go to your settings, fool. I mean, like, it's not that complicated. Just look. Like, folks never want to click set. It's like little dots and stuff.
Calm down, Jared. Calm down. He is here to attract a certain demographic. The brother is eye candy. You know, he's like the what's the right?
He's not even on camera though. That's what I'm
what's the-
saying.
I don't have the
Pictures of
setting
himself.
now.
Right, the
See,
Breakfast Club. What's the sister's name from Breakfast Club?
Angela Yee.
Yes, you're like our Angela Yee. You just supposed
Hey,
to
wow.
you ain't about to carry me like that too many times. I'm gonna tell you right now. You the one with the white fake shades now. So
I wish they was fake. God.
what an avatar at, man? I don't see
Coco,
it.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Coco. Appreciate you. Let me know how that goes. Hey,
No, but I think they know Larry Elder because of when Kwame Brown was beefing with Charlemagne, he talked about how powerful Larry Elder was and he's smart.
No.
And then, yeah, I think that crowd does know.
They know
Larry
him because he had a TV show. He was a TV judge.
Larry Elder?
Yes, Moral Court.
I ain't know about that.
God, damn.
That's
I didn't
how
even know
I'm
about
sure.
that. Damn. Hey, Rob, thank you very much. I read that Fannie Will's father was
the
a black
judge.
Hey, check with just real quick. Sorry, Diallo. Listen to Daruba. You got to check the status of these claims now. But member, cadre, it's not all the same thing. You got to check. Anyway, sorry, Diallo. Go ahead. Yeah.
I was just saying, Larry Elder had a TV, like a Judge Mathis type show, but because he has no formal legal training, it was called Moral Court. And contestants would come in there and argue the morality of their arguments or their position, not necessarily the legality. And he would make a moral judgment and rule in the favor of the person who had the best moral position. And it was called Moral Court.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I would imagine people who don't follow politics, because that's the only way you could know him if you don't really follow politics, because he's a writer, but his books are literally hot garbage, like fireplace kindling.
So just real quick, so Renee, I'll have to. I don't know. There's really no way I can double check. If you don't get the book, we'll just reconnect and I'll send it again. I'll just send another copy or whatever. But just to everybody that did put orders in, the deadline is really August 12th. If you placed your order, August 14th. If you placed your order on or before August 14th, you should have definitely received, or the book is in the mail. If it came in on the 15th or after, we gotta reset and I gotta get another mailing day. So I apologize, so we'll double check and I will make sure everybody gets their copy. That said, our guest is here, so let's take a quick break and come back and get started on something somewhat serious before we get to the real silliness later. Back in a second.
You got to earn your liberation.
All right, everybody. Joining us now is Dedrick Muhammad, who, among other things, is the Chief of Race, Wealth, and Community for the National Community Reinvestment Coalition and author of a new report titled Still a Dream, Over 500 Years to Black Economic Equality, linked in the show description. Dedrick, what's up, my man? Welcome back. And a fellow Columbia, Maryland volunteer Politico like myself. We are starting the grassroots revolution here on these boards and whatever's here. Anyway, what's up, Dedrick? Welcome back.
You have a lot more faith in our ability than I do at transforming Columbia to be the base of revolution. But yes, I am enjoying learning how these suburbs work here. So
it's wild, right? Yeah, we're gonna have to do another thing just on that. It's very wild. So definitely a learning experience. So Dedrick, just get us started. What I've had a chance to get into the report a little bit. Definitely want to get more into it, but give us the overview. So basically, Dr. King gave a speech in 1963, and everything has just gotten fixed ever since. Is I'm assuming what you're here to tell us. That's the
I mean, it is interesting how that narrative is just kind of the dominant narrative. It just maintains itself, like regardless of reality of time. That kind of there was a March on Washington, and that was, showed how great America was, and that shows the kind of success of America, and that people would think from what the clips they play of King's speech, that the whole thing was just celebrating the kind of American, the American dream versus, really, even the beginning of the speech. And this isn't obviously at all one of King's most radical speeches, but even, this speech, most of it is about how the country has failed to live up to not just this promise in the Constitution, but that 100 years from the Emancipation Proclamation, where there was a civil rights bills put forward and these types of things, that there was promise of freedom for Black Americans. And 100 years later, in 1963, we still hadn't made that progress. And, it was talking about the fierce urgency of now. Even the call for the march was like the time is now. And, the idea of the report is just kind of highlighting how 60 years after the kind of fierce urgency of now, the call for now, when we're supposed to all be moving forward on greater equality, where the March on Washington had at its center jobs. So it had an economic component, that 60 years later, we've made little to no progress in terms of income equality between Blacks and whites, little to no progress in wealth equality between Blacks and whites. We do note in the report there are some areas of advances. I think it's important to recognize the conditions of African Americans in the early 1960s. So we do go into that. But that's just trying to have an opportunity to really look at least on the economic side, where have we been the last 60 years, instead of just getting caught up in a celebration of the March on Washington.
Right on. Some of at least what I've seen so far of the key findings and some of what I've read in the first section, at least of the report, is interesting. But let's work backwards then a little bit from what you were saying there. What would you highlight as these key advances?
Sure.
And why are they defined as advances? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, 1963, 1960, African-American poverty rate, and poverty rate is looking at income poverty. Poverty rate was around 51%. So, that is stunningly high, that the majority of Black Americans were income poverty at that time period. And I think one of the more interesting things is how quickly it went down to around 32% by 1969. So I do think the Black freedom movement of that time period, March on Washington, War on Poverty, did have some substantive effects in bringing down poverty nationally and in the African-American community. And today we have a poverty rate around 20%. It's still high. It's still 1 out of 5 Black Americans. It's something that's ridiculous in the wealthiest country in the world. But, we definitely are in a different economic situation as it relates to being in income poverty than we were 60 years ago. Also note, there's been some progress in education. I'll just jump into the higher education piece. White Americans had, what was it, like 2.1 or 2.4 times more likely to be in college, 2.4 times more likely to be in college than Black Americans. Today, it's 1.7. That is a differential. And so, there's been some slow progress in that, right? So in poverty rates, employment. And I guess, one thing we didn't put in the report, but I think is true, and I think speaks to maybe, it brings up some critiques from me about why we're still focused on this so much. In voting, African Americans do vote at a higher rate. We have much more Black elected officials. And I think all of that is interesting to note, that we've made progress in those areas. But where we've had progress in those areas, it still has meant no direct change in income inequality or wealth inequality. And I think, it's interesting to look at those things and how they're not just correlated, when most of the time, when you want to talk about economic change, economic redistribution, people will point you to, well, let's just do more education, or let's try to vote harder or something, even though African Americans actually vote at a decent rate.
So two quick points, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues here. One is, how is poverty defined, and where just outside of that definition do we find by percentage the Black community? Because I admit I struggle when I often read about these poverty rates, and yet when I look more closely at how poverty is defined, it seems intentionally set to further confuse the actual condition of a majority of the people. So could we talk just for a second about that? How is it, and then just one more very quick point, and then I'll be done. Yeah. Or at least for now. Yeah.
You don't need to be done. It's your show.
Well, I mean, no. Well, I want to let my colleagues get in. I actually have there's a lot I want to say, but I don't want to just take over here. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and actually, I can't remember. Maybe you all know better off the top of your head than I do. I know about now, quote unquote, poverty rate for a 3-person household would be about $22,000 or less for a 3-person household. How that is calculated and changed every year. I don't have that formula in the top of my head. And I think there's plenty of critiques of the poverty rate. But what I will put forward is, and the reason I'll use it is because it's been pretty standard. And so I do think it is a measure of where Blacks were 60 years ago, where they were today. I don't believe, and I don't think just because you are at 23,000 versus 22,000 that you are
right. And that's what I was trying to ask. Like it seems like a lot of Black families would be just over that line and not counted as being impoverished and somehow thought of conceptually as being in some better condition. That's really all. But I think that's true. But even with that, it's still true that to have 51% of us below the poverty rate shows that in 63 we were in even a worse economic situation. I guess that's the biggest point I'm trying to put forward. But I definitely will agree. See, the median household income, not individual individual income, household income for African Americans is around like 47,000 or something like that. So that clearly is not economic security. And you look into wealth, and it's around $9,000. And so Blacks are in deep economic security. And I argue in the report, the overwhelming majority of us are in wealth poverty. And I think that is really the strongest socioeconomic indicator. That goes to the second point I wanted to quickly raise here, because I've been arguing for a long time that we need to focus on, as a political standard, the redistribution of this $20+ trillion annual GDP in the United States. But I think you all have this report is, I don't know why it hadn't happened before, but really crystallizing for me, I think, a better argument. Because as you say here, based on 2019 Federal Reserve data, $96.1 trillion in total U.S. household wealth was distributed very unevenly among 129 million families. The top 10% of U.S. households, roughly 12.9 million families, own 76% of all private wealth. The middle 40% own 22% of all wealth. The bottom 50%, roughly 64.3 million families, hold a combined 1% of the wealth. So for me, my thing is all of our overt above ground political arguments need to include a call for a redistribution of this wealth that we've all contributed to making. This $96 trillion in wealth is more than enough to do all the things for all the people that need to be done. It just needs to be distributed better. So that for me was a beautiful summary right there. So anyway, that's it for me initially. I'll let you and anyone else want to respond, or if my colleagues want to jump in and raise some comments, questions, etc. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just say one thing, and then would love to hear from others. As I've been looking more back at the March on Washington demands and even the freedom budget that came out a few years later, 66, 67, that was supposed to be a budget for the American economy that could bring forth, greater racial equity. It is interesting how much they were focused on jobs and at best income, really didn't have a strong wealth analysis. And I do think that's something that has developed over the last 40 years. I think, really maybe in the 80s, you started having much more of an understanding of the importance of wealth. And even in terms of kind of taxing, most people think of taxing of income, and that's just because you don't make that much money. And that's where you're taxed at when, really, if we're talking about redistributing wealth, we're talking about taxing wealth to redistribute the concentrated wealth, which is much worse than the concentrated income. So I was just thinking it'd be an interesting idea to kind of really look at 60s or even before that economic policy of kind of Black freedom organizations and critique that in a constructive way about, what was missing and what we're trying to add on today. So anyway, I do think, that relates to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
So Dedrick, something you have in common with Jared is when I share your work or actually talk about your work in my work, it stops me from getting opportunities. So There was this one organization in Baltimore who was using your work, and I asked them, like, have you read, all of it? And they was like, oh, they don't even know who he is. I'm like, well, why do y'all have his report on your website? And but one of their solutions was to fund entrepreneurial business. So I guess my question is, on the report you were saying, or it was said from 1959 to 1968, the wealth gap decreased. So Black folks got closer. And I'm curious to know from your conclusion what happened, or what exactly contributed to the wealth decreasing. And then I guess the second question would be like some recommendations for now, because one of the things that maybe I'm sometimes not always seeing is like policy recommendations that you might have, or I know you talk about baby bonds that Derek work on as well, but just those two questions: what was it back then, and then what do you advise for now?
Sure, and let me just start off with, I think, my biggest critique of the racial wealth gap, racial wealth divide space that I've been involved in for the last 20 years has been, I think it's been positive that there's been much more conversation around the racial wealth gap, racial wealth divide over the last particularly 10 years, and that's great. People are talking about it, recognizing it, but as they do with everything, they just kind of appropriate it, right? So whatever thing they were doing, if they were focused on entrepreneurship building, now they say, all right, cool. Well, we'll focus on entrepreneurship building to close the racial wealth gap. Or if you're focused on housing, focus on that. Or if you're focused on keeping marriages together, well, keep marriages together for the racial wealth gap. So it just kind of becomes a phrase that people use to justify, kind of whatever work they're doing. So I do think that is a problem and something I do try to critique and highlight. I remember I heard Hill Harper doing a presentation. I was on stage. He was presenting the work I had done, and then started talking about Bitcoin. And I was just like, what's happening here? But I mean, it's not what's happening here. That's what people do, right? They got to take, all right, people, it's great. People bought into this understanding of a racial wealth gap, and then they use it to push forth their own agenda. Now, I think you said that the wealth gap decreased between 63 and 69. I don't believe we said that. I think we said that the poverty rate decreased for African Americans. We did say, I guess, between 60 and 2019 that the racial wealth divide closed just a little bit. I think it was what was it? About African Americans in 1962 had 12 cents for every dollar of wealth of non-Black Americans. And by 2019, African Americans had 18 cents for every dollar of wealth. And we can make estimates or hypothesize what did that bridging, but I just want to highlight that was 6 cents of closure over 60 years. And at that rate, it would take 780 years for Black wealth to equal non-Black wealth. So just, to me, that is a massive failure in showing that we're not on a path to bridging the racial wealth divide. And I'll even share with you, if you look at other data, you can argue that the racial wealth divide has actually maybe increased a little bit. If you look at 1983 to 2019, using different data sets, right? I was using the most optimistic data I could find. And the most optimistic data is that at this rate, it would close in 780 years, which to me is a huge failure. And I think shows that moving around the margins, even having a non-discrimination framework is not enough to make that substantive change. And that there has to be massive federal policy, redistribution of resources in order to actually make serious headway in bridging the racial wealth divide. I think you might have had a third part, but I'm forgetting what the third part of the question was.
Well, I think at the time, yeah. But at the time, I think it was quoting Ellera, and it said that even at that time it decreased, the racial wealth gap decreased as well. But it did talk about poverty, but it said
yes. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm remembering that line now. Yes. And I do think, and I think that was in between that time period. I do think it is interesting. This Darren Court, I think she's from Princeton. She really did an interesting paper looking at trying to understand racial wealth inequality from like 1860 to 2019. So it's, it's using a different data set. She kind of had to pull together the data herself. Her team had to pull it together. And it did show like the greatest decrease in the poverty gap was 1860 to whatever 1870 or something like that, 1875, which was ending slavery, right, where we actually could be people, whites didn't own us as assets, and that was the kind of greatest decrease. And then you saw little bits, different types of decreases over time as we maybe got more voting rights, as there was actually after the Great Depression. You had the New Deal, and I think even probably getting rid of segregation, outright legal, Jim Crow, these types of things has allowed us to move forward slightly. And I do think the war on poverty actually, when 51% of you are in income poverty, it doesn't take much to move your wealth up a little bit by getting you out of income poverty. So I do think some of those reforms have been I wouldn't call ending slavery reform, but those post 20th century reforms have done small things to move us forward in terms of wealth, but very, very small. And it's going to take something much more bold, much more radical if we want to make a substantive increase in bridging wealth inequality.
By the way, I put a link to that Darencourt report in the chat. I use it all the time since you put me onto it when it came out, because one of its conclusions also is that no matter what is done, the initial beginnings of enslavement mean there will be a permanent ratio of, at best, I think they said 3 to 1. She said if you go back historically and take away all of the redlining, all of the segregation, say from the day of the official end of enslavement, and everything was equal, black people, just because of that unequal starting place, would still only get to at best 3 to 1 wealth disparity, whereas it's today 6 to 1. And then, as you point out, the initial 10-year period or so after enslavement was the biggest jump, because obviously if you're starting from 0 to anything, it's going to be a significant bump.
That's a real important point, that without real redistribution, at the best you could have hoped for, without redistribution, if you just would have ended slavery and everything was cool and they treated blacks like regular people, we would still have a 3 to 1 wealth divide without that redistribution. So it kind of highlights again, and she's very good in how she writes because she's in a prestigious university. So you have to really kind of get deep in the report to pull that out, right? Which is how she's able to put out that type of work.
Right on.
So I wonder if there's a way to, or an effort to like even make a larger argument for redistribution, even with like saying, okay, this example, when that wealth gap decreased a little bit, these are the public policies, or these are the things that allow that. And then what would be those same type of things now? Again, I know baby bonds is like, to me, it seems like it would take obviously a while, but if there's other ways that it could be attacked, do you think?
Sure. Oh, yeah. We mentioned a few policies. I think one of our more comprehensive reports, we had 10 policy solutions to bridge the racial wealth divide, which we put out 4 years ago. And so I'll say there's kind of, broad universal policies that I think could have disproportionate impact on the African-American community, which I think is important. Things, like, again, some basic things like even, universal medical care is important. I mean, because health costs is the number one source of bankruptcy for most Americans, right? So it's hard for, and we didn't get so much into it in this paper, but one of the great challenges for kind of racial economic equity, particularly for African Americans, is that you had deconstruction of outright Jim Crow, but then you had the construction of a radically regressive economy that really kind of came to fruition in the 1980s. Regressive economy meaning in the 50s, 60s, 40s, as the economy grew, the lowest income groups had the highest growth, right? Now, high income people also grew, but the growth was felt most by lower income, moderate income groups. By the 1980s, for the last 40 years, as the economy's grown, we're seeing that's mostly growing for the wealthiest of Americans, and oftentimes leaving lower income, moderate income people further behind. So we do have to restructure the American economy. We, make some note of the need for, taxation policy being an important part of that. In a report 2 years ago, White Supremacy is the pre-existing condition. We get more into the specifics of like estate taxes, or even just really getting back to the tax policies of the 1960s, which was much more progressive than the tax policies of today. Are all ways that you can, redistribute through taxes some of the wealth. And one other thing we've noted in previous reports, we spend about almost $800 billion a year in wealth development. The problem is most of that goes to already wealthy people. And so even if we just took that $800 billion a year and actually had it focused much more on low income, or let's say low wealth communities, we could make, some progress. Though I do think overall, I do think the most cost efficient and effective way of bridging the black-white racial wealth divide is some type of reparations policy that particularly focuses on African Americans. Though, and I've talked about this thing with Dr. Ball before. If you continue to have a regressive policies and you have reparations, it makes it that much harder. So I do think you need a much more progressive economy as well as reparations. That's really a radical change for the American economy.
And just so we're clear, that the report does go into your at least some specifics for how you define and describe reparations. We can come back to that if we have time. But yeah, I just want to point
before I let LL Cool J go. So Boyce Watkins is running from Jared for the debate. Maybe we can get you to debate Boyce Watkins. But so if you're around economists all the time, you are economists, and you hear people with analysis that say, it'll take 780 years for black wealth to equal non-black wealth. And I know you might not be around for the second half, but how do you respond to and think about and feel about all these financial literacy gurus, InvestFest, and like they pop up every weekend? How do you feel about, even with, I guess, celebrity class there onto it now, but what's your thoughts around that, and how do you kind of feel about those grifters, I guess?
Sure. And let me be clear about my economic credentials. Like, I have no degree in economics. So if you have to have a master's degree or PhD in economics to be an economist, I am not that. I have been writing on racial economic inequality for 20 years. I do, I've testified Congress, what have you. So if experience can make me an economist, fine. But if degree-wise, I am not an economist, just like Jared Bernstein, who was the vice president's chief economist who had no degree in economics, which I always point to as, well, maybe you don't have to have a degree to be an economist. So with financial planning, and being in the nonprofit space, and having banks fund a lot of the organizations I work with, that's a space that's always pushed. I think there is a place for financial planning in the terms of how do you try to survive the bad economic condition we're in. But the idea that financial planning will solve the bad economic condition we're in or substantively move us forward, is a falsehood. I mean, if again, you're making $47,000 median household income and $9,000 of wealth, there's not a financial planning program that then moves you up to the median wealth of whites at $160,000, right? So I think there's a lot of critiques for that. But I do understand. I think friends who point only to the federal economy and point nothing to, I think we need a progressive, and I've done some work on what does it mean to do financial planning, recognizing the racial wealth divide. Because I think you could actually do better financial planning if you recognize the reality of economic conditions of our people. And to be clear, most financial planning is not designed for the average, even white American, right? Because you make your money financial planning for rich people, right? So financial planning overwhelmingly is for high income, higher wealth people. It is really not designed for the middle American, because you can't really make money off the middle American selling them advice, or because the advice isn't selling them stocks. It's just trying to figure out how to better utilize government
Did we just lose Dedrick?
I think it's a computer glitch.
He done froze.
He froze. All right, we'll get him back here in a second. But oh wait, I think he's back. I think he's back. Yeah, Dedrick, finish up there if you would. There, I think he froze there for a second.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard the last part. We're just saying generally, financial planning is designed for high-income people, right? Like that is where financial planning makes its money. It's not designed for even middle-income white people. And so there's 1,000 critiques for finance. I think financial planning that really deals with the reality of the economic conditions of most people could be helpful as a survival mechanism. It's not really a change mechanism.
So did you intentionally say, I'm not dealing with this financial literacy, I'm calling it financial planning?
I mean, yeah, I mean, most people, even in the financial, I forget, you know, like in the nonprofit world, like they changed the term. It was financial literacy, and then it was, I forgot the newer term they used. But yeah, like most people even recognize financial literacy as a silly is a silly title, because of the idea that like if you just literate, then all of a sudden all these doors open up. I forget what they call it now. They've changed the name, but whatever you call it, it still is not going to solve the racial wealth divide. It might help you figure out some better ways to survive as we need to fight for policy change to change the racial wealth divide. So yeah, I do agree financial literacy is a silly term. And I even forget what the current term that even mainstream banks use now. Financial, I forget.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, LL Jay.
Oh, well, first, I really appreciate just reading the study and just right off the bat that you did acknowledge that there has been some positive change in progress, because I think that we have to acknowledge the accomplishments before we start to critique the failures. And there's a really popular position amongst, the Black community that nothing has changed and civil rights didn't do nothing, and I'm not my ancestors is born out of that. We are in our ancestors. Well, you can get these hands, as though we really don't realize where we came from and the conditions that our great grands and grands really had to navigate and endure. So I really do appreciate. I think anytime we start to articulate or argue or educate for any substantial changes amongst our people, we have to acknowledge what is good and bad, not just to say, oh, it's all bad, so we need to rise up. So I do appreciate that. What I am curious about, and I know you've kind of touched around, but I just like a real strong clarification on the difference between income and wealth. If you could really drive that home.
Sure. I mean, so income is, what you pull in every year. For most people, it's through your employment. Maybe it's through some type of benefits or what have you. But it's just solely that, how much comes into your house. So I say the median household income for African Americans, I mean, overall, $47,000 is how much comes in. That doesn't at all lay out how much is going out. What expenses are they paying for, right? Because you can, if you have 47,000 coming in and your expenses are 46,000, then maybe you have 1,000 left over. Or more commonly, you're spending 50,000. And 47 too, I believe. Yeah, 47,000 is also looking at pre-tax, right? So that's not even, how much money you really have to spend. So, income is how much money coming in. Wealth is, after you take away what you have kind of paid for, or your cost, what do you have left over as an asset? It could be in your savings account. It could be in retirement. For most Americans, most of whatever wealth, whatever they have left over after income and expenses, is in their housing equity, meaning whatever value they have in their home. When I say value, I mean how much their house appraised for minus what you owe mortgage-wise on your house, right? So, and that's where you get the median wealth for African Americans is $9,000 based on 2019 data. But if all or most of that is in your housing equity, then that doesn't mean you don't have that money in a bank account. So that shows why African Americans are in such precarious economic conditions with basic expenses or kind of new costs. I hope that was helpful.
Now, yeah, I have a two-part question.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, when you talk about the racial wealth gap, it assumes with white people on one side and Black people on the other.
Yep.
And I would argue it's not a static gap. whereas white folks are across the ravine staying there and we're there. The white majority economically, they're moving. They have a certain economic trajectory. And black people, we could assume, are following and trying to pick up pace to catch up, more like if we're going to use the gap analogy. And I have to say, if we look at the white majorities or white capitalist economic trajectory, is it a sound policy, a sound goal or objective to try to close the wealth gap? Because, and so the second part of that is, what inhabits that gap? If there is a gap between whites, I mean, really, what, besides just the fiat currency, the behaviors, the cultures, the infrastructure that creates and sustains that gap in between, will black people have to engage in those behaviors, have to sustain, support, embrace those actions, imperialism, capitalism, in order to cross that gap? Do we have to accept and embrace what is in that gap that created the gap in the first place? So are we on, should we stay on the same economic trajectory, and do we have to essentially be equal to white people so that we can become equal to white people?
I think the most clear response to that is generally yes. If we want Black Americans to have the same, because this is all very domestic focused. This is not talking about really. I mean, and we don't really even talk about what it took for white Americans to get at this level of $160,000 median wealth. But some people say it's not even that much money, but globally, that's a lot of money, and it took a lot of exploitation to get to this lifestyle, including exploitation of Black people, including taking away indigenous lands, including international. So I think, if you want to crack it open, that's why I do enjoy coming on this space, because you never get an opportunity to talk about it in this way. I do believe it's particularly environmentally and probably globally unsustainable to try to have private wealth, even at that level, all across the country. And then if you're talking about globally, it would be completely unsustainable. And that is, the challenge that we see in the world, is that the American dream really causes a nightmare. You really can't have individual wealth accumulation at that level. I think it's people have a hard time just talking about getting Blacks to that median white level. People never want to talk, and they always want to highlight, the way we'll do it is we'll grow the pie for everybody. But the reality which you're highlighting is that actually, so this has to come down a bit if we want something that's sustainable for the world, for the globe, for the environment. So I do. I mean,
I actually had a similar question in terms of does your report deal with the distribution of what wealth does exist in Black America among Black Americans? Because similar to what I hear in Diallo's question is, if we catch up to whites, then we just end up with the same level of inequality, with just greater amounts of with a greater pot, but the same levels of discrepancy and inequality will still exist. But go ahead, Diallo.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because over the last election cycle, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there was a contract that was very popular that I was aggressively denounced for denouncing. It was a denounce fest because Ice Cube came up with this contract for Black America, and he said that he consulted Black economists and activists and spiritual leaders to construct this contract. And if you read the contract, it was literally a reproduction of all of the policies in the contract for Black America, including not just the call for reparations, but how the reparations should be allocated. It was completely a pro-business, pro-elite solution for Black people, whereas all of the benefits that would come from that contract would concentrate amongst the wealthiest Black people who are already established within the economy. So he literally saw, Ice Cube was literally arguing that if you put Black people like him, 7, 8, 9-figure Black people on par with their white peers, that equals. And we have reports coming out, articles that are very popular about How many black billionaires? The new black billionaires.
Actually, I was just about to do a series on black billionaires, actually.
Right. So we are already seeing, before we even get the redistributive policies that the grassroots are articulating and fighting for, that the black elites are already orienting and organizing themselves to just like they did when we got civil rights and civil equality and political equality. When this economic equality comes, the black bourgeoisie is already positioned to take the lion's share of whatever comes into the black community.
So
that's why you got to sing your trickle down song.
But one of those economists that Ice Cube sought assistance from is the unassailable Derek Hamilton.
He talked to Derek for real?
Don't go Derek Hamilton worked with him on that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do remember that Derek Hamilton.
Right. Yeah. And as Geechee mentioned,
the unassailable Derek Hamilton.
But as Geechee also just brought up, trickle down. The black community within ourselves, even though we by and large reject trickle down when it comes from the dominant system, when trickle down manifests amongst LeBron James in his Vanity Project school and Beyonce bump. I don't know if you've heard about the Beyonce economic bump across the nation. Black people really love trickle down economics when it's within the black community coming from the black elites. So we embrace
yeah, sure. I mean, like, black elites are like all elites, right? Like they, when they have opportunity, they want to take it, and they love trickle down because they're capturing the top. I do think that the policies we do put forward in our report do not reflect trickle down economics. Our policies that actually every time we talk about tax policy and breaking up concentrated wealth, and do put forward programs, even things that I don't think even increasing black home ownership, universal health care, as well as baby bonds and these types of things. I don't think that's trickled down. I think it is fairly progressive. So you could, and I do think you could get outside of global sustainability, these types of things. I think that's separate. You could have blacks at a similar wealth level of whites, but not replicate the inequality of whites, because and that's why we focus on median wealth versus mean wealth. Sandy Darity talks about the importance of mean wealth, and I think there is an importance of mean wealth. But if you look at median wealth, you are much more likely to you're focusing on what more so the average African American or the average white American are versus if you looked at mean levels, I think the mean wealth for like white Americans is like $900,000 or something like that. And that's when you have the top 1% much more reflective in the average. So I do focus on median on purpose because I do think it'll be much more ground up analysis than using mean, though I do think there is some importance in understanding mean averages as well.
I always thought economists were not supposed to use mean because average it's distorted by it's the distortions by the extremes make understanding the average existence unknowable.
The reason William Darity
so I don't understand that. I don't know his argument. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So the reason he puts forward we should use mean is because so much of the wealth is in the top, is in the extreme, that he wants to make sure that we aren't just left with what the median white has, but that wealth captured by the top 1% is also looked at as being part of inequality. So I think there's a logical argument there, but I just I just focus on the mean. Also, too, like you tell white households the average is $900,000 of wealth. Most white people look at you like you're crazy. They're like, I don't have 900,000. 160,000 people believe and much more reflective of their life. So I focus on median and trying to change the median. Though, if we can make progress in median, fine, we can then talk about mean. But I do think we talk about breaking up concentrations of wealth by highlighting, our kind of our tax policy, trying to focus it much more, because we had a much more radical tax system in the 60s, radical compared to what it is today. So, yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Diallo. Go ahead.
I ask this in all sincerity, which is, I think, a lot of times a question we don't really ask when we mobilize for very just causes. What would victory look like? What would an America with economic parity, all other things being the same, just some policy changes. Because I mean, we do have historical precedents to draw from. And what would a globe where Black people who in the United States, ADOS, Black people with at least citizenship or some type of secured status in the United States, get on economic parity with the white majority? What would such a world look like? And if it's outside the scope, then I understand that. But
no,
what would victory look like?
Yeah, it would look, I think, a lot more like in history space, what was being done in the 30s and 40s, where, again, the white middle class was created. It didn't just develop, right? And there was massive investment, during the Great Depression. There was, massive federal work programs. But then after the Great Depression, really World War II became a massive federal work program for males, as well as then you had these home ownership programs where, people were getting, 0% down payment, low interest rates, pretty much free higher education for about 10, 20 years. You had these massive investments in America, and you even created the Social Security system that really helped get people who were too old to work out of poverty, which was the norm back in those days. So what you'd have is a much stronger, and, again, I don't usually get into this space outside of this context, but wealth isn't just what an individual household has. It can be also what government provides. It can be an asset. One of the strongest assets African Americans have is Social Security. Most of our retirement is based off of Social Security. It's not individual savings. So I think we'd have to have much more public assets, stronger public assets. And I think that's really the space we get to have greater economic equality in the United States. That would also include bridging racial inequality. So it's doesn't have to be complete socialism, but be a much more socialistic semi-democracy than what we have and we kind of played around with a little bit in the 40s.
In terms of imperialism and warfare, in terms of the ecology and destruction of the ecosystems, in terms of the psychology and ideologies that are pervasive in the society, in terms of because we'll either have to take money or take resources from the white majority, or the United States will have to go abroad and take resources from the white majority, take resources from multinational witches, or go abroad and more aggressively exploit the global resources. What type of ideologies? And we already saw with just a symbolic Black president, from the Tea Party to the MAGA movement to a full resurgence of overtly racist, white nationalist, Christian nationalist, and fascist movements. So, I mean, you
always want to push me. I know. More and more radical. You're like, I'm going to get you out of your job by the end of this thing. But
no, I
know. I appreciate the question.
Message.
And right, but immigration, we see that more affluent Black people are becoming more right wing, more anti-immigrant,
sure.
And against refugees, even though increasing wealth amongst all Americans would drive more refugees because that's more foreign exploitation. So in terms of, okay, I'm sorry.
Let me respond real quick, because also it had me thinking a little bit as well when I was looking at the freedom budget of 1966, 1967, and realized they were basing their request and how to fund it on this idea of, well, the economy will grow and that can pay for things. And that was a very 60s space because America was kind of at the height of its global dominance in terms of the economy, right? Europe was still fairly weak because of World War II, kind of dominated the rest of the world, through colonialism and these types of things. And in 2023, that's not the case anymore. Like, the idea that we are going to be the absolute dominant economy is not true, that actually our dominance over the world militarily and economically will, probably be lessening on the ongoing future. So the idea, and Derek Hamilton, the unassailable Derek Hamilton, he's been pushing, which is pretty radical for an economist, of not looking at growth as the way to move things forward, but to have a no growth economy. And to be even more radical, you might have to really recognize a declining economy and people having to have less. Right. And I do think that is something no one wants to talk about, is not a palpable political message, but I think that is reality. I think we just look at kind of the environment there. We will have to live with less in order to have a kind of a sustainable ecology, right? And that's just something that, again, like I think it's completely off the table. It's like people think it's totally crazy. I mean, people think it's crazy to really talk about bridging just the racial wealth divide, black and white. I mean, this is kind of really reformist. It really wouldn't be that hard. It really wouldn't even cost that much. We can pull out $1 trillion for COVID, $150 billion a year for Ukraine. We can find money easily. We could bridge the racial wealth divide. We just really do not care. Right now, to deal with what you're talking about, having a sustainable global economy and politics, that would require actually a radical change in the way we live day to day, which again, it's kind of completely off the, I don't know, political talking points.
But is there any realistic, any realistic option, any viable option that will allow the planet Earth to sustain its life-giving and life-supporting capacity that doesn't include the radical option? I mean, closing the wealth gap.
I would agree that. Now, there are some people out there, again, and capitalists like to be very optimistic that, and they always say this, technology will change everything, that we are on the edge of abundant energy that will radically change everything. And we're soon going to have AI and robots. And so labor won't even be an issue. So there is that thought out there. I don't really believe that. I think, that's, people always are saying technology will solve everything. And it really usually maintains, get a little Marxist, the class relations that we've always had. So I don't buy that. That is the argument put out there. I think probably the most realistic thing is that we'll continue to have environmental catastrophes that will actually eventually have deeper economic consequences that will then make us have to live in a more sustainable way. But we will be forced that way through, environmental catastrophes, right? So that's the not so optimistic, I have a dream view I have of really what the future is. That's interesting. We started off talking about King, I have a dream. We seem very at a different place.
With that bookend, just real quick, just as a time check, or how are you for time?
I need to go about 9:10. Okay. So I got like 10 more minutes.
All right. Anybody got something they want to, anything else?
So I think so in Diallo's idea or thoughts around the racial wealth gap, but I don't think, well, I guess organizing spaces or more radical spaces, it's just, how do you feel about us using it as a tool to debunk or explain to the financial literacy grifters and entrepreneurial militants that the way in which the economy is set up, like, is, this is proof, or this is a tool to show you that it's just not going to work, as opposed to it being an actual goal to close the racial wealth gap.
So, and I want to let me tofu squares back off of that question, and because I think, Dedrick, your co-authored report here, if I understand where Geechee's going, now this is a layered, I think what you actually did here, and maybe we'll have you come back and talk more about this, because I think what you all did here was pretty slick. But I think you give the answer here, because as you note a relationship between, as you describe it, the Black Freedom Movement and concomitant assassinations with substantial, as you say here, substantive political economic advances. So I'll just stop there and let you respond and to either of that. But I felt like that was an answer to Geechee's question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did think, to me, that was an interesting piece, is that I was looking at the kind of what people think of as the radicalness of the 60s. And it is interesting, in those times, there was actually much more Black economic progress and Black progress, period, than I think I've ever lived through, right? And, you know, it was in the midst of, you know, kind of mass struggle, of, you know, government repression, assassination, disruption. And there was a feeling in 68 of hopelessness, even after really substantive change in 7-8 years. And it kind of makes me wonder, what are we supposed to be like when we haven't even seen that type of change? And there was really a feeling like there was no way, there was no positive way forward by 68, 69 for many. Yet they saw much more progress than we did. And that's just, you know, I didn't get into that in the report, but that was something as I was reading, I was like, man, what does that really mean for us that are much more clear that our economy is not going to just keep growing, that we haven't seen the type of progress they saw in decades, and that we're seeing the, you know, a fall of America with, you know, environmental catastrophe. You know, I think it really highlights the challenge and struggle that we face to kind of keep activism in some, I don't like to say hope, but some type of belief to help move us forward. Now, I'm sorry, there was another question. I got sidetracked on that. I forgot what the other question was.
Well, Geechee, go ahead and rephrase it. I thought, anyway, I heard
mean, it's pretty much
about using the racial wealth divide to critique entrepreneurs and financial literacy people. And you know, and I guess I try to probably be a little too nuanced on it. I just would push, and was really challenging them, financial literacy people. So no, let's really create what is a financial plan, or what does it mean to be financial? If you don't understand the racial wealth divide, if you don't understand what the median income and median wealth of the Blacks, you're not financially literate. So that should be in your financial literacy program, right? And it should be clear that we're not on a path to economic equality. That should all be part of financial literacy. So I would push them to radical, if they want to stay in this financial planning side, financial literacy, I try to radicalize that. I mean, you know, everybody can do what they want. You could just shoot it down. But I try to radicalize that with a real understanding of the economy. And even entrepreneurs similarly. I'm not against Black. I'm for Black businesses. That's great. But there really isn't that much wealth in business for the average American, right? Like over 90% of businesses are one-person shops, and they're really just kind of your side hustle, right? So when people play all these games about what it means to be an entrepreneur, you know, you're lucky to make $10,000, $20,000 a year as an entrepreneur, as a side hustle. Now, if people want to talk about how do we strengthen each other's side hustles and these types of things, cool, I'm for that. But the idea that entrepreneurs are these people that are creating all of these jobs and all this wealth, that's just not true for most Americans. Entrepreneurship is not a serious point. And even if you look at least when I've seen the data on entrepreneurship, it's like small business and second properties. So even the small amount of money that is listed under entrepreneurship, most of that is someone has a second house that maybe they inherited from a family member, maybe they're renting out or what have you. So for the average American, entrepreneurship is not a serious component of wealth.
Gotcha. Right on. If we got to end, I can't think of a better way of ending this segment. So Dedrick, I thank you very much for coming through and for the work consistently over all these years. Look forward to digging in further to the rest of the report and having you back whenever.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you all. It's good to be on and talk about aspects of the report I never get to talk about.
Right on.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Dedrick. Take care now. Peace. Everybody, again, shout out to Dedrick. The report is linked in the show description, and really appreciate him coming through and chopping it up for a second. Let's take a quick break and then get into this InvestMess real quick.
You got to earn your liberation.
How you all want to proceed? Anybody want to go first? You want to get us started? What you want to do?
I wonder if we should each of us. Well, I don't know if all of us had two, but each of us go over one, and then kind of present what we have and ask questions, and then keep going like that. But Diallo go first.
The assignment.
What you mean? What you say?
Diallo, superstars don't have to do homework; they just have to show up.
I didn't understand the assignment.
So the assignment was: here's the lineup to this year's InvestFest that is beginning today, I believe. And So we had talked about last week. We went through this, and we had talked about starting to go through picking some of the featured lineup here, and just highlighting them a little bit, learning about them a little bit, and so, and I had said in our chat that I would do the whites,
The Buckras, ignoring the Buckras.
and then and I think I got tricked. Oh, I missed one. Dang, I knew I missed one anyway, but I missed two. Damn, my bad, y'all.
Yeah.
But anyway, I got 3, maybe 2 and a hook. We'll have to have a conversation about that. But anyway, so yeah, so that was the assignment, by the way. Looking at the lineup here. So I got a couple. I think Geechee got a couple.
I just couldn't. It was too many to pick from. InvestFest
Well,
is like a
you
box
said you
of
picked,
chocolate.
You said
never
you
know.
picking Jim Jones and David Banner. That's what you said. So
Yeah, because I already know about them. I wouldn't have to do anything. I could just.
okay, they're lazy.
Because Jim Jones and David Banner are both here. Of course, check out David Banner talking about Black August and political prisoners with Kalanji. But anyway, so that's and they did get his picture up. I see he wasn't pictured last time because it was. I thought they might have been really looking
Big
for
ball,
me.
big baller
They
brand.
got
How
the-
not to get robbed by your daddy?
And I mean, he's if I understand correctly, unfortunately, he's got plenty of time to do this because injury is keeping him out again, right? I think he's injured again.
Oh, wow.
So I don't think he's playing right now. So speedy recovery, Geechee, I think you frozen again, man.
Paul
I think you need
Chaser's
to go
come a
back to
dime a
Avatar.
dozen.
You need to go back to your Avatar status.
Frozen.
Geechee. Yeah, you up here.
Well, we
frozen.
can hear
I'm
him.
glitching again.
I mean, that's what I was saying. He was fine with the Avatar. Then he tried to come back
All
on
right,
camera,
man.
and it didn't.
Y'all
I
want to
liked him
see
on
me? That's
camera. I
fine.
felt.
I
But
know
he's
where I'm not
frozen.
wanted.
I mean, be frozen. I don't care. I was just letting you know. Be pick a good pose, and
The technology gap. When
Need
my
to close
sons were in school, I would hear a lot about the tech gap because Black kids didn't have access to computers and software and coding like white folks. So Geechee is a victim of the black-white tech gap as well.
Not that I'm aware
I know,
of,
man.
but the black ball community is apparently a lot larger than I thought. As far as I'm aware, we're not kin. But anyway, Geechee, you want to go? You want to get started? You want to go first?
I'm gonna go first since Diallo ain't did his homework and he's slacking. On
I
his
did.
paper.
I didn't.
He want to be LL Cool J, but he don't want to get into the real cool shit, right?
Well, Black people are into coup d'etats now. We're into that. We like that.
Oh,
Here we go.
boy.
Here we go. Here we go.
Oh,
I know.
boy.
I thought we was against
Let me
it.
just
Now
keep
we're
going
for it.
somewhere else,
I'm
'cause
just
this
trying
guy-
to keep up. I'm like Brandy. I just want to
boy.
be down with
He don't
you. I want to be
concede.
down
He
with
don't
the
get.
people.
Hey, he get
So when the
punching and
people
shit
all get into
intellectually,
something,
he don't
becomes
concede.
popular
He
in the
don't
hood,
concede.
I just blindly follow.
When you lose, you lose. Anyway, that's this brother right here is
I
I'll
don't
just
think.
pull
By
up
the
his
way,
picture.
I don't think Diallo. I don't think. I can't help it. I don't think Diallo lost.
Well, I don't think he
I don't-
won
I don't-
either.
Okay,
I don't
I'm
think
good with
nobody
that.
won.
I
There
don't think
are
he
no
won
winners
either.
when Black people fight.
There were no winners.
But
There
he-
were
he-
no
he-
winners.
When we go against each other, my brother, my sisters, there are no winners.
Diallo, the D in Diallo stands for double down.
I
But
just
anyway-
think, yeah, there was just a lot of talking past one another, and there was some, yeah. Anyway, but yeah,
So
it was a
pull up
good
that Facebook.
conversation. There you
This
go.
is the Facebook link I just sent. The
Yep,
finesse
right
brother.
here. Rich and
So-
unemployed.
Yeah, the funniest shit. Yo. No, but go to the top. He said he infests.
That
not
is the
infests.
top. Oh, I finessed my
yeah.
way.
He infests his way to the stage.
He stopped misquoting him. We are journalists here. Quote him properly. He said he
My bad.
finessed his way.
My
and then
bad. So
asked if
anyway,
we're coming.
this how you said Duperton?
It's so perfect that it's on Andrew Young International Boulevard. I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
No, so he's actually became famous, I guess, for scamming, right? So he went from trying to steal tax money and tax returns to getting Snap cards and money, fake IDs, and I think over $395,000 that him and his sister were locked up for stealing from the people. And so I think it's
so what makes him worthy of this invitation to InvestFest?
Well, I mean, now that was almost like, I think he said a year ago he came legit. So he has a podcast, and I think he still got a little bit left over.
A whole year of legitimacy.
That's what he said. Like he's been legit since, he went from scamming to finessing, but finesse. So, but I thought it was ironic that him as an aspiring black capitalist, who is pretty much stealing money from, a socialist type benefits, right? So the SNAP assistance, he's cheating the system to kind of get money. Now,
commendable.
I posted a couple of clips, right, on Facebook and Instagram, and I can share some of here too. But this brother, once he started doing the SNAP business, he actually had young kids working for him in his stores. He had like a convenience store, 2 of them in Georgia, and there were no customers coming in. The kids would just swipe the SNAP cards that his sister would bring to them like every hour or so. And he actually brags about not paying them. He was like, "Yeah, we didn't really pay them off of the cards. We paid them like a minimum wage type stuff." So eventually the young boys was like, "Yo, he making all this money and he ain't paying us. So I'm going to take some cards and sell it at Kroger and sell it at the grocery store." So the young boy started selling the cards, and he's claiming that's why he got caught. Well, in an interview, he literally said, like, when the little boy got caught, I thought about killing him, but I ain't want jail time. So instead, he going to pay me back the money somehow, right? And then he was like, he said the little boy, he was like, these young kids is all about greed with them. So this dude talking about the young boy got greed, but his ass doing fraud, right? Now, before his homeboy taught him about the fraud game, because his homeboy knew a connect at the hospital where he can get a bunch of names, right? So he came to him with a bunch of names one day, and Jonathan said, like, "Yo, what you doing with all these names? Nigga, you going to jail." That's what he said to him. But then he said he came back a couple of weeks later with a Benz. He's like, "Oh, put me in, put me in the game." And that's kind of how he got in the game, because he saw his homeboy actually had, he was getting money from the little fraud joint. So he talks about like literally entering the fraud game and the scamming game as if like well, I guess it is a legit industry if you really think about it. But he pretty much put himself in the arena of being a fraud guru who's turned legit to like a podcast. I don't know what he is, a podcast guru now. But I want to share
what you had put on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Is this what you? No, go ahead.
No, I was about to send you this clip because it started where he was kind of addressing it. But yeah, that's it too.
Unlimited amount of names, and the type of nigga he was, like, he would go big. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't no small time nigga. And like, when he first introduced me to it, he was like, "Yo, bro, I got this drug." Before he had any money, he was like, "Yeah, bro, I got this." He showed me some paperwork with like a bunch of names. And I was like, "Bro, you about to go to jail, nigga." So I was like, "Nah, I'm straight." So I seen him again. He was like, "Yo, I told you, bro. I'm about to." He showed me a BMW. He's about to. He's like, I was like, "Bro, you cap, man. You ain't getting that shit." Man, 2 weeks later, nigga pulled up in that same BMW. He said he cashed out like $30K.
Damn.
And so I was like, "Yo, put me on." After that, he made me a believer. But this was like my introduction to fraud. He was like, "Yeah, I'll put you." Well, he kind of bullshitted for a couple weeks. Finally put me on, showed me how to do it, but he only gave me like 5 names. So I ran the 5 names. I probably had like 1 go through. And I was like, "Yo, bro, I need some more." So this was like 2011, going in 2012. So this was at the end of 2011. So taxes ended at like November. So I was like, "Yo, I bet 2012 come, I'm about to go crazy, bro." I like had my little plan, had a bunch of names. As soon as January came, I went in and it failed. I put in so many names, bro. I was looking at like
the universe,
5 mil.
Sheesh.
And it just did not go through, bro. I don't know why. I don't know. Like, the universe just wasn't fucking with me. And So what I did was, so I put a bunch of names in. They went through, but the cards that I had froze up, and so I'm trying to think like
the tax cards.
Tax cards,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm trying to figure out how can I get these motherfuckers unlocked. So I called. They was like, "Yo, you need to have IDs. You need to send your ID." I was like, "Shit, I don't know nobody. Let me figure this shit out my damn self." So I'm on Photoshop trying to make an ID, and I cracked it. I cracked the code.
Oh shit.
So I sent one in. It didn't get approved or nothing. So I'm like, fuck. So this was going in 2000. I worked the whole year of 2012. Nothing came out of it. I probably made like $10,000-$15,000, but it wasn't the $5 million that I was expecting.
Right. But this free bands though. Like,
Yeah, but
you say it ain't work.
that wasn't nothing, bro. Like
I hear you.
I was trying to get the whips. I was trying to get
Bang.
everything, bro. I was trying to move out the mama crib. I was in my mama's basement at the time.
So this is, oh my God, man.
So after looking him up and seeing all these names, I do believe that they're running the play that the Breakfast Club do. So obviously the interviews that you see on Breakfast Club YouTube, that's the interviews that don't have to pay. But then anybody who has a business, you can go on the Breakfast Club and you pay them and they'll interview you. They'll give you the video. It won't post a video, but you'll have a video of you being interviewed by a Breakfast Club. So I think people like him and all these other speakers, they're paying to be on this platform, along with the small audience that's paying. And so if we were going, I would be interested in seeing actual how many audience people are there, as opposed, because there's 126 speakers. So they have enough with the speakers and the entourage. They have enough to fill up the arena with just the speakers and the entourage. So I wonder how much audience people are actually going, especially after seeing this scammer type dude who's is a speaker. I'm amazed that JT ain't even dealt with him yet, but like it's amazing how he gets into this space. But then I had two more videos, because on the one hand he actually says how like, yo, the interviewer asked him like, yo, you only getting $140 and y'all got 6 workers. He's like, nah, that's because we're not paying the young boys. We ain't paying the young boys.
So what about all these other?
And then again, the young boy, like I said, he found his way.
I'm talking about finesse. You hear Money Man. You hear or like niggas like get a laptop, get these free bands up. You feel me? Like we had the pandemic, niggas turned into the bandemic. Like, what is your thoughts on finessing now? Like, I mean, I see is Rich and Unemployed Finesse's only club. Like, what are your thoughts on the whole finesse?
Man, I say get it how you live, but
that jail hurt him now. You could tell.
I try not to, like, my Instagram, like I know what I preach, and like I'm only talking about what I experienced. So like I know people like are intrigued by it. It's like when I post that type of stuff, like people hit me up like, yo, put me on. It's like, bro, it's not what you think it is. It's not just like trapping, like you go get some drugs and you start flipping that shit next day. Like it's so many lanes when it comes to like finessing and fraud. It's millions of ways to do it. And you really got to find your own lane in it. Like sometimes you might get like
find your own lane in fraud.
Everybody was on the same wave. But like once that shit died down, it's like people kind of like was lost or trying to find a new wave.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like
a new wave of fraud.
Listen, find your own lane in fraud. But anyway, apart from the last video I just sent, apart from fraud, this is him saying that he's legit
the transition,
now.
like
he
how do
good.
you go
like he
from being a scammer, right? And then now to because a lot of people who are in that lifestyle, they don't know how to make that transition. So how do you make the transition from doing that to doing that, and then it becoming so successful so quick? Like, what was the transition for you?
first it was prison.
Okay.
So prison, that's when I came up with the idea of the brand. And it wasn't just for a podcast. I just wrote podcast as part of it. I didn't even know I was going to be the one doing the podcast. I didn't know how it was going to be, whatever. But I wrote everything down. Rich Unemployed Finesse's only club.
What is this outfit?
I also got Fraud, which is finally rich after unstoppable determination.
Hey, pause that. Did you hear what he just said?
Started working on the brand.
No, I got confused by the whole outfit.
Not scam.
So he used the analogy fraud now, and that's his selling point. He's pretty much his lifestyle that he lives is what he's selling on his podcast, and he has this concept called fraud, which means finally rich after unstoppable determination.
Hold on, let me run this back real quick. Hold on a second, my fault.
The transition, like, how do you go from?
I wrote everything out. Rich Unemployed Finesse's only club. I also got Fraud, which is finally rich after unstoppable determination. But
finally rich After unstoppable determination. Jesus Christ.
I just started working on the brand, and the podcast shit just kind of fell in my lap. But I was still fucking around. Like, I was
Boys
still
to men.
jugging.
Yeah, exactly.
When the podcast started really growing and shit, I was like, man, I gotta stop fucking around, because like, really, that life is really scary, bro. Like, you could really do some shit right now in 2023, and they come for you
Scary.
2025. So I was just like, man, I don't want to keep living this life, like looking behind my back. So I wasn't making no money from podcasts. I still had like some money I didn't got from doing what I was doing. And shit, I think I made my first dollar in like July of last year from YouTube.
What did he learn
And I
though?
was like, I said, I'm done scamming. I'm done.
Facts.
I don't want nobody calling my phone about nothing. So I made $100. The next one I made $5,000.
I love seeing hoes.
I love seeing hoes.
Wait, okay.
I'm done.
Listen,
Okay.
I don't know if he done
So you went from
because he did the PD.
no, but I'm saying, was the transition just because people say the transition was like next month, but was the transition really next month, or was it really like 3-4 months from now?
Nah, it was really July. It was I was in my 9th month of podcasting, and I made $100.
Oh, you was there. Got it. Okay, so now it's making
He
sense.
did
Got
go
it.
9
Okay.
months with just grinding.
Got it. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
the part. All right, got it. Okay,
All right, you
so
can
that's the
stop
part
it.
I was
But them
getting
checks
at.
Boys
do
to
be like
men.
that. Some
Got it.
people
Okay.
don't be.
And Geechee,
So-
you
Count
can't.
Philly's
go
back
ahead.
again.
So I'm saying, like, again, he said he stopped. He's gone legit now. He's done with the scamming. But again, he did sign up for a PPP because this is public information, and he's the one employee. I think he asked for like 21,000 or something like that. But he literally said, like, you could do the scamming shit this year, and 2 years later they come back and get you. And I mean, it's already suggested that that's what's going to happen with PPP. A lot of people going to get run down on. So it's interesting how he thinks that he can go from fraud to legit and not still carry those tendencies, because he's on that interview. He said he won't do it again, but he's loved all the lessons that he learned from it in terms of how to do business. But anyway, that's what I got. But I also got another guy, but I'll go after you cover some of the white boys. I got the politician on there, the Democratic Socialist. I followed him too.
That joint was painful.
Yeah.
The first guy that I got, I did Michael Novogratz, or Novogratz. And it's fascinating. I mean, it could probably be an endless rabbit hole. But to me, it's what. So the note I made to myself is that these EYL characters are trying to plug into elite capital and become part of the machinery of exploitation. Like, they want in. And to me, this would be a sign that they want in, because this guy comes out of the Fortress Investment Group, is currently CEO of Galaxy Investment Partners with focuses on investments in cryptocurrency. So it feels like in exchange for, because remember, in some of my own work on this issue, if you look at the investment rates of Black people investing in crypto spaces, and with the accommodating losses, Black people are overwhelmingly, or by percentages, I forgot the numbers up, but it's actually, I looked, they're in my book. But the percentages are the Black percent investment rates by percentage of population are more than double or 3 times what whites are investing in crypto. So it seems like in exchange for helping bring more Black suckers into the crypto investment space, these EYL characters are hoping for some entree, maybe through some sort of investment or into their platform. I don't know what the deal would be, but it seems like they want some sort of, again, in exchange for providing Black investors, EYL gets relationships with elite investment capital. So that seems to be the trade-off. So one of the things, just looking into this guy a little bit, I had looked initially into actually, I think I got stuck at looking into Fortress. But the long story short of it, there are all these ties to BlackRock, to Goldman Sachs, to crypto, to and in this case SoftBank, which if people are paying attention even to some of these documentaries coming out, SoftBank has been investing in everything from WeWork to what's that white lady that scammed everybody with the blood thing, Theranos. They did, here it is, WeWork, it's all, I mean, so it's like it's that was really all I had as far as this. And when I get to this other woman, there's, I think, some more parallel with I didn't really, I don't know, in terms of what we're doing now in terms of time, and there's not really, I just started clicking on all this stuff in the wee hours, and there's just all these anyway. But with total assets, $362 billion US, SoftBank, so that's what I think these EYL cats are thinking that they're doing. And I have no evidence. I don't know what the specifics are, but I get the impression that they think we're going to bring in some investment. We're going to get plugged in some way. And I think the reverse is they're going to provide us some black investors. They're maybe going to provide us some of those points that they need for their, the ecological social justice scale that BlackRock and others want for investment, even into elite investment groups. So it's just the bottom line, though, is specifically related to the first hour of the show. None of this has anything to do with anything that's going to be good for black people collectively, and does nothing to help black people understand, or anyone else understand, how the economy works. So it is what it is, though. They call it InvestFest. It is an InvestFest, and it's meant. It will also further brand EYL as the place to go for paid classes and entree into that world. So
right. I think they also explicit when they say that, like, although say they don't call their phone numbers or the contacts for nothing, but in the interview with Angela Yee, one of the guys literally said, we have Rich, what's the guy named Rich Paul, and we have LeBron's other homeboy. He said we got both of them, and eventually we're gonna get to the bigger guy. They didn't say LeBron's name, but like you can tell they connecting with people, and they said we don't have direct connects to, a Jeezy or these other person, but we got their right hand person, and we talk to them every day. And the reason why they got Robert F. Smith is because Robert F. Smith saw them interview Steve Harvey. And so they're presenting like they're not really using these people to try to get money, but like literally that's what they're doing. And when they said we're not asking for something, Rashad said, no, we are asking them. We are, like, I asked Diddy a couple times, but it didn't make sense to him for the first couple of times. But this time when I told him, oh, you got 15,000 people, you can go ahead and explain what you need to explain.
I think he said 30. I thought he said 30,000. It was something. I thought it was he's promising them numbers and audience.
Well, maybe 15,000 speakers right. And their entourage is going to be there, and then the audience is going to be 15,000. So you add it together, it'd be 30,000.
Well, I saw that a lot of those. Remember when we looked at the site before, and they were like, "This is sold out. That is sold out." That the website has actually taken some of those down, those sellout posts, or.
Yeah,
and they're real. I mean, besides the vendors, I think the vendors are all at full capacity. But in terms of access, VIP, and the various tiers, it seems like they've reopened some of those tiers.
Oh, I'm looking at it.
Well,
now.
if you got 13 G's, and I know you were saving up, and you were slow.
Well, I hate the snitch,
and I think they did that, weeks ago, because they wanted to do that whole fear of missing out. What's that?
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm about to say. Eventbrite has an option. You can do that. Eventbrite, you can do that with an option.
Right. So I think they were trying to feed into the FOMO. Like, man.
It does look like here you cannot buy general admission or even VIP. You can only buy the 13,000 and up.
Apparently,
there's the 99.
Wait a minute. Oh, you can do the live stream for 100.
Oh, I thought they said they wasn't doing that. They
Now, what if we? So wait a minute. That's what I'm saying. If we got the live stream, can we just do a live stream with their live stream? Can we live stream their live stream?
Until they go and snitch, until they run to the feds on us. But yeah, we could get some of it out
on
there.
Saturday and Sunday. If you miss it, you can still watch the recording later. Oh my god!
Oh, it's not live then.
No, it says
it's a recording.
Get live. No, it says get live access on Saturday and Sunday, and if you miss it, you still can watch the recording later.
Well, that's actually something that they just put up there.
That's new.
In the Angela Yee interview, they said that in the future they will do that, but they do have a free option though.
But I really don't buy. I think invest.
I'm so tempted to do that.
If you're in Atlanta, they do have a free day. I think today is the free day where you can get into some panels and go around and deal with the
how onerous, how generous. I mean, generous.
They don't say that on the website, Geechee.
No, they said that in the interview with Angela Yee because Jim Jones actually going to be on the panel for the free people. So the free people.
Hey, that's one of my guys.
The free people get to listen to Jim Jones. You ain't got
I
to
am
pay
so tempted to do this. I really am, Eric. I'm like right there. Like I'm really.
How many links we gonna get? One link, or we can all watch it together? What's up?
All it takes is one link.
That's what I mean. If I pay for that stream and then we go live from here and just run the stream,
let's do it.
I'm sure they would. I can't imagine they would either allow it or that it would be seen as acceptable. But,
yeah. I
don't know. Every time there's a pay-per-view fight, I see it free on YouTube every day, every time. UFC, all that shit.
Nah, we might.
I know,
we'll
Erica.
get banned
I
for
know.
real for that.
Yeah.
We'll get banned for that.
And they would definitely come after. But I'm still tempted to get it just to watch it.
I mean, I think we can watch. We can watch it.
What if we did it on Twitch?
Yeah, we can, but we can also watch it and screen record different clips though.
So should I do it?
If you have the generational wealth to spend to blow $99.
Oh, I thought we were gonna crowdfund.
I'm not
we're gonna raise some
let me
money.
tell you.
Tell DJ
live stream Patreon.
The money coming in. Look at the money.
InvestFest ain't one.
The money.
Do a Patreon for the stuff you don't want to strike. Yeah.
Cent.
Rob dropped the money. ZZ
I
just
wouldn't
dropped the
pay.
money.
If y'all want to, I would. Hey.
I am very curious. I'm gonna have to think about it for a second.
Good luck with that, man.
I'm okay with it since we ain't show up there. It's cheaper than a plane ticket for 3 people.
That's a good point.
And
the only thing is, like to Kim's point, though, we don't get the man in the street interview type thing and the gotcha. Like y'all still out here poor. Y'all still need this.
Yeah. Well, we can do that next time.
I think we should think about that next time.
Yeah. Need a travel fund.
Well, I mean, they have other events other than InvestFest. So remember, they was coming to Chicago for that little Black Wealth tour or whatever when they was acting like Tupac in a wheelchair. So they doing events all year. So we don't have to go to the big event. We can actually, if we go to a smaller event, we might get on stage, a challenge.
I don't want to do all that.
We're gonna ask a question now. Diallo ain't gonna go in there without asking. Diallo going to engage.
I'm not.
If they open up.
Yeah, I wasn't advocating going
Y'all
in.
said it was some real thugs there. I didn't think it was no thugs.
I mean, the Jonathan DuPont talking about killing kids. He talking about killing little kids. So I don't know. There might be thugs out there. He said he.
Well, real quick,
is it ain't?
There's a couple other people I want to get to before we get out of here. Just to quickly run through.
What about me?
I'm waiting. That's what I'm saying. I want to make sure we keep it moving. He said he didn't need to. He already knew.
Yeah, that's what I just picked people I already knew. I don't
well, go ahead.
So I have to look.
Tell us
Well,
about
one of
David
the
Banner.
people.
Tell David Banner.
Well, I'll talk about David Banner. He was caught in the radioactive fallout of a gamma bomb, which mutated his cells. You wouldn't like him when he's angry. Anyway, David Banner is an interesting character to me. And can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
My headphone. Y'all can hear me? I guess. If I can't hear myself, I can't even hear my. What's wrong with these headphones?
Good, man. You don't want to hear yourself. Trust me. Go ahead.
I guess I can't be responsible for what I said because I can't hear myself. Anyway, David Banner is a hip hop artist, and I thought it was curious because to me, just for me, my limited knowledge of that invest black get money space, I thought that the rappers, especially since they put Diddy at the top, are kind of like the draw. Like you said, you can go see Jim Jones for free, and so I think the celebrities and the rappers and the artists are kind of like the hook to get the masses in, because a lot of these obscure figures, like especially the one Jared talks about, are the ones to kind of make the sale, but you got to get them in before you can make the sale. So it's always interesting whenever there's celebrity participation or celebrity sponsorship. But anyway, David Banner is an interesting character because he came into the industry with making music about Cadillacs and pimping. And that song, Like a Pimp with Lil Flip, it's a banger. And he was actually called to Congress to speak about the misogyny and violence in hip hop. And so he went to our grand government, to our prestigious halls of Congress, and basically told them, which I think is a very tired argument that they've been making since the 80s, that he's just speaking on what's reflected in his community. And he told Congress, if you change the conditions of my community, I will change the content of my hip hop, which at that time, and where it was coming from was actually, even though I don't agree with, we just talking about what we're going through, I don't agree with that. I thought that was a pretty profound statement, which got me more interested in David Banner as an artist when he said, y'all can't change the conditions, we'll change the content of our music. And it was interesting to see that he evolved from, Cadillacs and pimps to more social consciousness. He was always came out even before he started doing more socially conscious activism. He had the Heal the Hood Foundation and all of that. Even before that, he was saying that I carry a whole state on my back. And he has, if you don't know, he has a huge Mississippi tattoo on his back. And even though he would come out to promote his music, he would talk about the conditions of Black people. Some could argue left behind in the deep South, the rural South, the flyover country. And he said, when I came out as one of the most prominent artists out of Mississippi at that time, he carries the whole state on his back. And he's always articulated that he felt a responsibility for Mississippians, the poor, rural, forgotten, unseen Black masses. And then he had hooked up with Skip Coon, and they have one of the dopest tracks with Luca Brasi, one of the dope all-time top 10 hip-hop tracks, especially for conscious hip-hop. Go check that out. Skip Coon, David Banner, and Luca Brasi. And I'm like, man, this dude's really doing conscious hip-hop. And then he moves to his latest one of his most recent, not very recent, because he's branching into acting and this type of shit with InvestFest, but the God Box, which was more progressive lyrics, promoting love of Black women. And he's one of the few artists from the dirty era from the 90s that actually said, because if you look at contemporary interviews of people like Snoop Dogg and Ice Cube, and Snoop's asked, do you regret the things you said? We don't love them hoes, bitches ain't shit but hoes and tricks. And they was like, I don't regret none of it. I stand on all of it. And they get applauded for that, where David Banner is one of the few people who, to a degree, recognize the error of his ways. And now he promotes respect of women, loyalty and solidarity with the struggle of Black women. He talks a lot about sobriety and the chronic effects of alcohol abuse. So he has really transformed himself physically and ideologically, which when I saw his name on just somebody I'm not, I wouldn't count myself amongst his fans, but somebody I've always paid attention to since like a Pimp drop and have always, even when I'm like, man, this dude, but he always does shit that kind of like, because even when you come out with an album called The God Box, that's a strike against you. But then when I started to hear the content and his rationale behind it, I'm like, oh, okay, I can understand that. But then there are some red flags, you could call them, because he has been quoted as saying that he was informed and took the position that if you take on the role of Jesus, you're going to get crucified. And he stated that black people will harm you, and that the black race will try to bring you down. And he started saying that, where it seems like, damn, like he's taking on more of a Messiah complex, when before he counted himself amongst the strugglers. He counted himself amongst the oppressed masses. And I start to hear little snippets of him moving more into like black leadership role and being more of a paternalistic position of black people above and beyond, because of his wealth and his fame, that he kind of, so it makes sense. And then one other thing with this concept of the God box, him rediscovering his spirituality and sobriety and turning his life around. I've always recognized that this whole new entrepreneurial cultism and all of this InvestFest type thought leaders, gurus, was born out of the prosperity ministry. So I think the prosperity ministry primed the black masses, the vast majority of black people who are Christians, has primed them to seek wealth. I mean, I was in church back in the 80s and 90s where to seek wealth and camel through the eye of the needle, where poverty was extolled as God loves the poor and God has a special place in his heart for the poor too. If you broke, God don't love you. So he's kind of a bridge in that, where it would make sense in the God box, turn my life around, prosperity and health, to investment, Bitcoin, get rich through both the divine intervention and financial literacy, wealth hustle. So I do think, from my point of view and my personal opinion of David Banner, for him to be associated with this, having such a dynamic career and having so many redemption arcs, for him to be associated with something like InvestFest, to me is a blight. I would be interested in hearing his rationale, but I think he's kind of falling into that evolution from prosperity ministry to prosperity politics, is what I call this shit. The reparations hustle.
Geechee, real quick before I forget. First of all, I love that whole arc, the history you just gave. I love the whole thing. And with your permission, because I agree with you, when we ride out as we close today, we're gonna go out to that sophomore slump track that you were talking about with Skip Coon, because that was amazing.
Well, I could just rap it.
No.
All I want to be is what Jackson I was, because I don't give a B about the words. I am about freedom.
Now we're about to mute him for real. Now there you go, mute him for real.
Sound even better.
We're gonna do it for. So I just wanted to. I try to give you your propers, but we're gonna let them do it on the way out for real. Go ahead,
do it just as good as they do.
I need to ask, like we say in Charleston. Is that the same level scrutiny that you gave James Small being associated with some grifter type shit? Is that?
Leave him alone.
No.
Leave Dr. Smalls alone. Leave him alone. I'm just asking, brother. Leave him alone.
See, because
leave the elder alone. You disrespectful.
I see what you're doing.
Disrespectful.
He don't like the rap lyrics unless it come from Ice-T, and he ain't talking about that grift.
Leave Ice-T alone. What is your problem? Neither one of them were on the list for the show today.
Oh, I had a rap just now. Listen, he don't like the lyrics unless it's Ice-T. He ain't fucking with the grift unless it's
I
David
just was
B.
jeffing with
bars.
I said I like it.
I'm just saying
he's not as good as Ice-T, but he can hold his own.
I'm just saying the way you critique David Banner, I thought you would probably give James Small that same energy, but I don't know if you did. But
listen, respect your elders. I don't know where you coming from.
I'm just asking. That's all.
I think that was, and I think your point about the prosperity
dissing the
gospel,
ancestors. That's why your camera don't work.
What?
You heard?
I ain't dissing the ancestors. I'm doing what the ancestors tell us to do with their work.
If you had the ancestors coverage, your camera
you'd have been right.
Your
camera would be right if you was right with the Lord. But you
I don't know what
that was a strong So let me just do Geechee, your turn. Actually, my bad. Go ahead. Your turn to go again.
All I got left
is rap the song. We don't have to play it.
No, we're gonna play it on the way out. That's not. We got to do it justice. Go ahead.
Look, I got a gold mic here. I could get down just in case if your audio
David Banner
messes up.
David Banner is a voice of reason among the cats over there at EYL, right?
I didn't say all that. No,
almost.
I think they bringing him down. Like Bobby did Whitney. They bringing David Banner down.
Well, maybe
if I was on his entourage, I'd be like, "Don't do that, man. Go somewhere."
Maybe they're doing the same thing for Jamal Bowman. Congressman Jamal Bowman is speaking there. Bowman, and he's supposed to be a Democratic socialist, and he's able to speak. He's able to speak about imperialism. He's able to speak about how capitalism doesn't work. Ironically, is in a black capitalist environment. And so I think even watching this, so I was trying to figure out who is funding it, who's the sponsor. So you'll have Fidelity, you got Zillow, AT&T, and it seems like the Democratic Party or whoever will be doing something. There's some type of voting conversation or something going on there if they's bringing Jamal Bowman there. And, obviously Bowman is into a lot of like liberal politics, and he's a proponent for the Build Back Better, the little stimulus plan. But I'm curious to see how, I don't know if Jared's buying the joint for real, but I'm curious to see how he would even speak on that platform again, because he explicitly, only when talking about immigration, he talks about the imperialism that America been practiced in Central America and how we need to receive these people in because we destroy their country and we have to do something. And then I also saw him I won't say explicitly, but passively speak against Cop City, and advocated for the organizing that's going down there in Cop City. At the same time, he's a part of the working group who's the advisory crew in the U.S. on the Sahel. So this guy has a lot of like weird, contradicting, energy in it. It's just interesting that they have him there, but I think they only have them there because he's recorded arguing with politicians on camera after the session, which some people call it tactical because they're not having those conversations supposedly in there. So what he's doing is arguing with these white boys in front of the camera. So yeah, I wonder if. No, actually, never mind. I answered my own question because I don't
think it's a contradiction. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say I don't think he has the environment. Just like Dedrick said, he don't have an environment to have certain type of conversations. He won't have that environment to talk about socialism or imperialism or any of that shit. Cop City, which he should. He ain't gonna have the environment to talk about that there. It seems like, but it would be interesting if he did.
But I don't think, even if he does, I don't think it's a contradiction to have liberal Democrats speaking on or even nominally participating in things associated with a variety of topics that we would think they need to be. They're there to comment on it or engage those topics in a way that's safe and sanctionable by those in power. So if he's going to be there talking about Cop City, it's going to be in a way that diminishes any radical analysis of the situation and fraudulently, and in many ways it's like, I think it's more akin, not that he was wherever politically that even David Banner has been, but to Diallo's point, it's the capture taking place is not him of them, it's them of him. That would be more how I because when you look at I mean, just so like one of the characters involved here is Donahue Peoples III, who was the son of Don Peoples, who is this nominally black billionaire and investor here with his wife. Here with his wife, here with Grant Cardone, and this is Donahue, his son, who's going to be taking part in this conference. So initially, I admit, and no disrespect to him, but I saw him in his. I didn't initially put the peoples together, the name together, and I saw him as one of the white guys that I would be. So I don't know to what. So this is what I was like. To what extent does blackness get extended if his father is mixed and then has him with a white woman? To what extent does he get to claim any blackness? But in looking into them, well, to him in particular, we've talked about his father here before.
On the documentary, yeah.
Well, a couple times actually he's come up, but certainly with that documentary. But his son Donahue is involved. They're both involved with investment. I mean, with not investment, with construction, with real estate and development. That's the word I was looking for. Development. Now, if you look at his father, the father here, he is associated with a lot of failed attempts to develop, a lot of right-wing conservative politics, a lot of Fox News supporting the Trump presidency. You see here with Grant Cardone, et cetera, and so forth. When you look at his son, you start seeing a more progressive, more diverse version of that. So when you look at his son, who runs Legacy Development Legacy is the title. It's a development group based in D.C. You see a lot. And his father is also associated with being anti-affordable housing. In fact, losing contracts in D.C. because Mayor Bowser told him you don't want to allow for affordable housing. So his son takes over Legacy or develops Legacy Development or whatever in DC, and all of a sudden you start seeing a lot of discussion of affordable housing. He gets contracts. He gets DC affordable housing contracts, you start and when you look at his website, there's all this more diversity. He's got a lot of black friends and black partnerships, et cetera, and so forth. And it just seems like, but at the same time, he claims happily to be following in his father's footsteps. So I just read it again. I'm putting all this together in sort of a rushed. So a lot of this is insufficient research and speculation, but it just felt like that he was carrying on his father's legacy by extending his father's work, by rebranding his father's work into areas that his father had previously not been able to get their business. And I say that, and I'll stop in a moment here, but when I read this article here in Insider, if I can get my notes to come up, a couple of interesting things come up about that. Starting, I think that's where I'm starting. Right, starting here. So you see, so in this article, he's talking about, he's I'm happy to be following in the footsteps of my father. But here's where I think where I'm putting together some of this here. To Peoples, that is the son, housing affordability is one of the most pressing issues facing the U.S. right now. There's no reason that somebody gainfully employed should have to be housing insecure or struggle with finding an apartment they can comfortably afford on their full-time salary, he said. That's a failure of American society. Part of the problem, he said, is that developers are being restricted in terms of when and where they can build new housing. He cited historic preservation in the West Village, for example, which prevents developers from knocking down existing brownstones to create more housing. So part of this I'm also putting together is their struggles in New York, so they come down to D.C. where they might find a little more room to get things done. Anyway, these restrictions, still talking about New York, exist even though they were constructed to satisfy the housing needs of a New York that's about one stitch the size of New York City is today, he said. That is the son Peebles. Instead of treating the symptoms, we need to begin to treat the underlying cause of the disease, which is, in my mind, a consequence of artificial supply constraints. Andrew Berman, executive director of the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation, told Insider that for the most part, the organization was all for more affordable units in landmarked areas that can be achieved through adaptive reuse and new construction, Berman told Insider. But there is often a catch. What is often proposed, however, is large, new, entirely or predominantly luxury developments which do little or nothing to address affordability issues and actually often make the situation worse, not better, he continued. Meanwhile, Simeon Bankoff, executive director of NYC's Historic Districts Council, an organization that advocates for the city's historic and cultural neighborhoods, noted that as a developer, Peoples has vested interest in more laxity on development. If people who are in business of doing real estate development didn't have to deal with regulations, they wouldn't. So I say all that to say that in, again, an insufficient study, but some rushed, research and speculation, it feels like the Sun is rebranding efforts to get more room to develop by couching their attempts around this issue of affordable housing and providing affordable housing, which, by the way, as I sit on my Hickory Ridge Village board, that is exactly what the Kimco contractor that owns our shopping center is arguing it is trying to do when it's looking to develop several hundred luxury apartments, but also including some room for senior and affordable housing. So it's so they come in with that language, and then next thing you look up, as what his father had experienced in New York in several failed efforts, you look up and the plan actually accounts for far more luxury and high-end space than is thought to exist. So connecting it to the EYL thing, all of this feels like another way of bringing these folks into black spaces, bringing rebranding their efforts as being concerned with the lessers and the poors and the black underclass, when in reality it's just another play to get that bag.
So when Kathy Woods come there from ARK Investment,
I looked into her too. I did look into her. Yeah, she's my.
She worth that bag. So when she come there, she ain't coming from the goodness out of her heart to help close the racial wealth gap.
Well, now this is something I'd have time to fully get to, but to figure out. But what I looked into Kathy Wood, who is the head of ARK Investment, one thing that was clear was that at one point they owned a lot of Coinbase, which is one of the main dominant exchanges for crypto. So this was sort of that parallel I was looking at in terms of the Navarosky guy, whatever his name is. Now, just last month, Coinbase settled a suit that, the long story short, is that if they are selling their tokens and crypto products to the public, they're not counted, according to the SEC, as a security, which for them was seen as a huge victory, meaning that if the exchange isn't going to be regulated by the SEC, they can continue in an unfettered way to basically rip off investors and do everything that they've been caught doing and involved in. So just before that ruling, when they were still on trial and Coinbase's stock had hit the highest it had been, Kathy sold a whole bunch of Coinbase stock and made a whole bunch of money. Now that the ruling has gone in favor of Coinbase and the crypto exchanging community, I'm wondering if we start to pay attention, will ARK Investment start coming back into that space to reinvest in something they expect to become an unregulated investment exchange space. So here she comes to EYL, fresh off of making $82 million real quick off of her selling of stock in Coinbase. Now that they're not going to be regulated by the SEC, is she going to come back in and tell everybody, now the coast is clear, get your money in and black dollars, and give up some of those black dollars? So I don't know. I mean, again, I'm rushing. So this is, But this is just the vibe I'm getting, and as I try to think about why are they all willing to partner with each other, so that's it. For me, I'm done.
Do I Okay, it's my turn again.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Is it not?
Jones.
All right, this one's gonna be really
Capo.
fast.
Capo status.
Yeah. My second person is Jim Jones, and since y'all want to be some nerds, I don't know who y'all trying to impress with visual aids and all that lame ass stuff,
Actually, we care about our audience. We know you don't care about the
Wow.
audience, but we care about our audience.
I am the audience. I am the people. Y'all looking down.
Shit. Oh shit.
I am the audience. I am the people. But anyway, my guy is Jim Jones. What made me think about Jim Jones is he's like the living embodiment of Black conservatism, Black reactionary ideology. And there's always this myth that the streets is somehow synonymous with the people, that he's also gang affiliated. And I've been combating this myth that the gangs are for the people, that the gangs are somehow against the state. Gangs oppose the status quo, as Minister Farrakhan and many others falsely proclaim that gang members are our frontline soldiers in the event of any type of racial violence or any type of state repression, armed military state repression. Then the gangs would somehow turn their arms away from other gang members and the community as a whole and become this armed militant fighting force on behalf of Black people. And we all are very familiar with Jim Jones' gang affiliation. We're familiar with the content of his hip hop with Diplomats and his long career in hip hop. So it makes a lot of sense. Whereas I was rather disappointed to see David Banner associated with it. I think Jim Jones fits in squarely with this pro-capitalist, get money at all costs disposition. And many people overlook that these artists come out and tell them, you know, he said Jim Jones suggests Democratic Party offers too many handouts. But in the details of that, he said that the Black community is lazy, that the Black community is impoverished, not due to decades and centuries of economic warfare and subversion, but we're poor because we're lazy. We don't want to get the bag. And when he stated this, while Trump was taking office and Obama was exiting the office, he stated that he gave his basic tacit support of Trump and the Republican economic platform of privatization, low taxation, and basically the cannibalistic dog eat dog capitalism. Not that Obama didn't support that, but he's not even down with the myth of the handouts and that. He even though we all understand through Ball scholarship and so many other sources that, you know, the handouts aren't really there. The giving up, the real beneficiaries of government handouts and government policies are not the poor, but the elite. So I think that the type of ideology, the disposition, the objectives and goals of Jim Jones are there. And I just really wish the masses of the Black community could understand where I see a lot of people promoting, raising your kids is the new gangster. Loving your community is the new gangster. Entrepreneurialism is the new gangster, where we have this concept that gangsterism is sometimes pro-Black and anti-establishment. And so that was kind of my push on Jim Jones. Jim Jones politically is a conservative, economically is a conservative, even though on the surface he would seem with his you know, his sagging designer jeans that show off his full, you know, designer underwear and all of that, within the heart, minds, ideology, and agendas of many of the most bring down the system rappers. Oops, I'm sorry. What did I do? Oh, bring down the system rappers. Many of them are at their heart right-wing, conservative, reactionary, and many of them have fascist or proto-fascist tendencies. And let me just share. Let me just share just one more. Like with this is being identified. Why are Black rappers aligning themselves with the right? And, you know, they use Ice Cube, but there's so many rappers that would fit with this. I thought this was a relatively well thought out and sussed out article. And of course, you know, being that it was written by a Black woman, she was attacked and so on and so forth for daring to have a critique of misogynistic rappers. But these rappers are not just pro-capitalist. They're pro-Zionist. They're pro, even, like I said, proto-fascist, or as the white racists term them, like-minded minorities. So I think that we can say that it's not just about getting cash money. There is more than just where we talk about wealth and income. There is a whole ideology, a whole value system, a whole way of viewing the world and valuing people. And it inundates your intimate relationships and connections. It inundates the ecology and the very capacity of the earth to sustain life, where we just looking at dollars and hard currency and our capacity to buy things we want or need. It goes much deeper than that. So that's why I wanted to bring up, Jim Jones in this. He's, people might laugh and mock and be like, oh, this dude's just some, washed up rapper. It's so much deeper than that. He is passing the baton. He received the baton and is passing the baton of Black conservatism. And we think of Black, where we started off the show talking about Larry Elder and these tightly wound Black conservatives, stuffy Black conservatives like Larry Elder. But we tend to think that the opposite of that is a Gucci belt, sagging Jabot jeans or whatever, and they don't wear Jabots. What True Religions? What are the rappers wearing these days? I don't know, but whatever. We have this as if Larry Elder on the opposite side of him would be someone like Ice Cube, because he cusses, and Larry Elder is articulate and well spoken, or Jim Jones. When actuality, the Jim Jones and Larry Elders have much more in common with each other than they do with the masses of Black people, especially struggling and oppressed Black masses. So that's my little takedown on Jim Jones. And I'm glad at least his seminar is free, because I mean, damn, talk about no bang for your buck. So I hope you're right about it. At least you can go, huh?
Does he have a podcast now? Is he podcasting too?
Oh, do we?
I thought
after the locks embarrassed his ass, I thought we'd never see him in public again. If that was me,
I thought he was also maybe doing this because I thought wasn't he in need of some community service after? Didn't he get caught up in the whole NFT lawsuit thing with the Kardashians in them? But
and another thing, one more thing, where Jim Jones said that Black people vote Democrat because we want handouts. He was raised on health welfare. He was raised in public housing, received food stamps and other government benefits as he was coming up in Harlem. So long before he was balling, he was handout. So that's another thing where even if we believe that Black people who came up in the struggle like us, when they make it, they'll somehow have some empathy or understanding or connections to the struggle, because the struggle we went through, that is another myth. These motherfuckers get up there and kick the ladder off. They can come up on the very policies that when they get up there, they will start to denounce and go against. But yes, I did look into it, and it is confirmed that Jim Jones was raised on the very handouts that he's now denouncing Black people for advocating for or seeking or depending on. Now, so it's a piece of shit, man. I mean, it's a shitty dude, man. That's why his pants are always sagging like that, because he's shitty and he don't want to mess up his designer jeans. I'm done.
Ballin'.
Coonin'.
Well, his homeboy Cameron got a good, they got a little, didn't
they got a 9 or 8 figure deal?
They got a bag.
It is what it is. Coonin'. Why ain't Jim Jones on that?
Because Jim don't know about sports. Cam and Mace.
Oh, I didn't know that. Good. I respect him for that. I take back everything I said about Jim Jones.
They actually played ball together.
You don't know about sports.
It was nice though.
I don't know. That's all.
Cam
I said what I
Cam was a hooper for real. I think he was like.
He's named after a cult leader that's responsible for the deaths of hundreds of black men, women, and children. And I don't know what's in this dude's psychology to even think that calling yourself Jim Jones was a come up or clever. So that's another thing. The dude calls himself Jim Jones.
I mean, have you seen?
I thought naming all these rappers calling each other Capones and Haitian Sicilians and taking all these Italian and Siegel, Bugsy Siegel, Benny Siegel.
Ricky
I
said
thought
that's his actual
That's
name.
his actual name.
is it? Let me see.
His last name Jones.
Is that man named Jim Jones?
So his parents named him after Jim Jones.
Well, maybe they didn't know.
Because he gets you to drink the Kool-Aid.
No, his name is Joseph Guillermo. Come on now, stop playing with me. Guillermo. Joseph Guillermo Jones.
How you say it, Geechee? Where your people from? Where you be from?
Geechee, man.
That man's name is Joseph Jones.
What your name was? And so look.
What your name was?
What your name was? So look, it's a bunch of rappers with some silly ass names, you know what I mean? And you know, you have the
Italian and Jewish mobsters is one level depth of dissension. But naming yourself after mass murdering cult leaders, that's I think that's pretty much as low as he come. We gonna have a rapper come out, what? David Duke or
it's
what other?
It's perfect for a rap name. I make you drink the Kool-Aid, son.
Yeah.
Jim Jones.
You know, the hardest line was still Dale Jones. His mama named him Colin because he know he be full of shit. But when he said about that's the hardest line ever, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. And now I had some visual aids too.
Thank you. Well, good job,
man. And we proud of you, Diallo.
Thank. That's all I'm here for.
I would send you some flowers, but you
and adoration. That's the only reason I come here. Huh?
I'm so proud of you. I would send you flowers, but you already got a bunch, so I'm proud of you, man. Good job.
I ain't got no flowers. These are not flowering plants. I do have some flowers out on the balcony, my marigolds, and
that's why I ain't sending you your flowers right now, bro.
I don't think I could get the camera out there, but out on my little balcony, it's really nice out there. You got some cantaloupe and melon and tomatoes and green peppers growing out there.
In Chicago?
Yeah, in Chicago. Grow anywhere, everywhere. Don't even get me started. I go down, man. Hey, you know, that's what we should change the whole format. Thank you.
Good job,
thank
Diallo.
That's all. That's all I'm here for.
Look at that. Look at that blush. He can't see the blush because his white beard, but he sees blushing.
This is a salt and pepper beard. I'm not white bearded yet.
Hey, you know what? I found 2 gray hairs, one on my beard and one on my mustache. So I'm coming, you know, you guys are.
And that's why you turn the camera off with your little.
Yeah, man. I gotta
you sabotage your own camera because you too vain.
You old vain. That's terrible.
Hey, I'm gonna have to dye this shit before I come back on camera. I'm gonna have to dye this shit.
You go pray to Allah. Farrakhan's almost 90 and he ain't got one gray hair. So apparently Allah, he can't stop atrocities and massacres, but he can keep your hair jet black.
Oh, Diallo, Farrakhan got a lot of chemicals in his head.
How you know that? He's a natural man. Have you read How to Eat to Live?
Yeah,
he eats 1 meal a day.
He didn't write that.
Prays 5 times a day. That's it. No chemicals over there.
You went over there? Did you go over to his house?
No, I just read their rhetoric. I mean their propaganda. I mean their literature.
Wow. I'm gonna bring Wesley Muhammad on here to straighten you out, bro.
Oh my gosh. Is he still with them? Didn't he denounce Scientology merger and went rogue?
I don't know if he went rogue, but
don't bring me no rogue NOI members. Every time they branch
he's working
off.
on his book. He's about to come out with the book that proves everybody wrong on Malcolm X's assassination.
He ain't finished that yet. That's
I thought he was still working on it.
I thought he went rogue. Anyway, like I said, I'm trying to give you
things. Watch your mouth.
I'm trying to give you. Don't be talking about Calypso Joe like that. I'm trying to just give Geechee some grooming tips, some natural grooming tips. See, y'all turning this into a debate, and I'm just trying to give the brother some grooming tips.
Don't mention Calypso because he ain't even known for the Calypso for real.
He's nice on that violin, though.
Oh, yeah, man. One of my favorite songs, like I said, another top 10 song, The White Man's Heaven is a Black Man's Hell. I love that song. I ain't even gonna lie. That's on my rotation. And if you ain't heard Farrakhan's song, White Man's Heaven, Black Man's Hell, you ain't lived. I mean, he be spitting on that. I don't know why it hasn't been remixed and remastered yet.
Because he probably got them royalties tied up.
Yeah, probably.
All right, good people. We good.
and there is a Elijah Muhammad museum under construction right now here in Chicago. So it ain't open yet, but there's a Elijah Muhammad museum.
We gotta do it. We gotta do it.
I ain't going up in there, man. Listen, I don't believe I will be welcome.
Diallo,
what are they gonna do? Little sculptures
go.
of underage secretaries? I don't know. Paintings.
Oh man.
Excuse me.
Man.
I don't know what's gonna be in there. I'm just speculating. Like it's gonna be the man's history and legacy.
Listen, whenever are we ready? Are we good for the day? Anything you want to announce? Anybody doing anything this weekend?
Nah, man, we just finna doing this play group with your book. That's about it. That's all we got going on.
First of all, I did want to shout you out, man. I really appreciate you and Barter and Build for the book discussion. The first one was great. I look forward to the next. I really appreciate it. Very thoughtful, eye-opening in some ways. So, thank you for that, man. Appreciate you.
Word. Diallo, did you finish the book? We're supposed to do the interview next week.
Yeah, I did finish the book, but I understand. I don't understand the assignment.
We interviewing Jared next week.
Oh, is that really the plan?
Yeah.
Okay, word.
I'm glad you clarified that.
He always claimed to not understand the assignment. So I think that's proof when he be debating people. He just don't be hearing what they're saying, and he just be arguing love and shit.
There you go. I'm on tape. You can say all you want on the back end, but I'm on tape.
That's the problem. You're on tape, so you can even.
Is something wrong with Skip?
No, that's the asset.
Huh?
I don't know.
What is
Skip
that
in love,
about?
man. He in love.
Okay.
He didn't fell in love. He out there, and plus he a rapper, so he probably out there, probably locked up or shot somebody.
Wait,
he's doing rap shit.
We're gonna let him take us out. We're gonna let him take us out this week. Big shout out to the remixers. Big shout out to my colleagues here. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, click the bell, sign up at Patreon, blackpowermedia.org, and a lot more coming. So we will see you when we see you. But make sure you, like I said, got the bell rung so you don't miss forthcoming BPM fair. Thanks, everybody. Peace if you're willing to fight for it. Like Fred Hampton used to say.
There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today.
See, all I care to be is what Jack said I was. So I don't give a deal about no buzz. I am about freedom. I never mind the chickens of the club. I will live and die for the cause just because. If I don't, I wonder who will. Y'all place value on your wheels and your automobiles, but never acknowledge your children's diminishing skills, or that they continue to feel all the prisons they build. My life is all God gave me to give. I want us to be free, but you would really rather I chill. While the blood of the slaughtered is watering, killing fields. You diving and shucking, she stripping and sucking for the bills. All for the love, for the bread, cheese, dough. Sell pills, we blow, let pistols go. Got coke from the Contras, gave crack to the Pope. And the government responds to it, just say no. I'm freedom fighting for the love you selling out on the low. And a man ain't fit to live without something he died for. I'm in the trunk with this rifle like I'm Lee Malvo. Y'all want a Sambo? Well, I'm Skip Rambo. Jordans and camo, white tees and ammo. Put the freedom in the kick, snare, and the sample. I'm Rambo, put the freedom in the kick, snare, and the sample.
Fuck it, then I'm sad, don't have no ammo. No spook, I don't sit, I'll kick in your front door. Malcolm with a K, Omega with 4 foes. Ella's body severed, but we don't know what we fighting for. 5 and the 6, we bang on the wrong thing. Let's fight against the people that came and names changed. Transatlantic trips that let their bodies hang. Ying from a tree, it's cool to ship a key. You won't fight against the system, but you're worrying about me and who I won't sign. But you gon' find and gon' put it in the chip and embed it in your mind and all off in your spine. Confederate flags, I'm bitching because that bitch too flying. I will give you the answer, but we running out of time. Time.
ain't lying.
See, they don't wanna listen, so loud what I gotta be. Cause my people are proud of the poverty that got they son shooting guns over dollar bills. He getting money, snow or sunny, but his daughter still read at a first grade level. And she 11 years old with her nose held high to the sky, cause she got her first purse made. Yes, on her birthday, she was singing birthday sex. Let's skim right over what's showing in plain sight. Looking the other way, but knowing it ain't right. Like over 50 shots, now Shine Bell gone, or a flashbang thrown in a little girl's home. Ayana Jones, who? Ayana Jones. One shot to the dome, she was 7 years old, it's a shame. Imagine being daddy one day to putting your baby girl in the grave. Something need to change. This ain't a game, if you playing to the man, you be slaving to the day you laying face up in the casket. With credit card sharks still asking if they could put your name on some plastic. Man, it's a war going on outside, no one is safe from. Heavy as the darkest spark, I'ma create one. Cause a little light might be enough to make some straight from the ways of the slave. The pain of the hunger is enough to make a sane man put it to your brain for some money and a chain. And I don't really blame him, cause if you in the game screaming money and a thing, you resemble a fillet. A lot of people saying that I'm preaching to the death. Man, get that shit a rest. I'm going to the breath, won't come out of nigga chest. They in it for the checks. I'm in it cause I wanna be remembered as a vet. Luke Brazil.
You got to earn your liberation.